All right, here we go again, Craig. Hasn't been the most ideal kind of show. We're gonna be honest with ourselves, as I'm trying to do all the things that Nick does so effortlessly as we start a show. But here we are, Reds down 5-2, bottom 9. We're gonna try to save some of this for the show. Frustrating is a word that's probably going to be used. But again, it's a weird thing about sports. I will say this. I know people probably don't like when I do this from time to time, but I'll say that the reality is that if this team finds a ways to get lucky, and I'll call it what I think it is, it's lucky. If they find a way to get lucky and score 4 runs in the bottom of this 9th inning, then we're going to have a different show, and that's possible too. So I'm not giving out hope, Craig. Maybe we'll have one of those. We're due for one of these. I just want you to know, Craig, we're due for one of these. At some point in Chatterbox Reds history, we're going to come on here upset, pissed off, but then we're going to all change our tune. I thought it might be last night. Maybe it's tonight, Craig.
Yeah, I look, back-to-back gut punches really is what it comes down to. The last 2 nights.
Yeah.
Definitely put you in a tough position, and now you're facing Jason Foley again. And last night, you gave it a run against Jason Foley. We'll see if we can do it again tonight.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like lightning should strike twice. I know they didn't get it theoretically done last night, but it felt like they kind of got themselves in a spot where you don't get too many chances like they had last night. The tying run 90 feet away with less than 2 outs. It's been well chronicled as to how that didn't happen. Didn't see that whole situation turning into a snowball effect as what it did turn into. But you know what? You never know what happens on the internet. So here we are, back better than ever, doing another show, Craig, and I hope we have another thing to talk about, because if not, it's going to be a relatively dissatisfying show. We'll call it that.
For sure. Are you a little surprised they went back to Foley today, or do you think it's a confidence?
That's a good start. We're going to have to sync up, just so you know.
You're ahead of me. Yeah, Steer just hit the ball, so that's a good start.
All right. We're going to have to figure out a way to sync up. I've paused and played mine. I'm going to do it again. Usually, Craig, I never have this problem because I'm always the one way behind, as you well know. Let's see here. I do want to do one thing before chat gets on me too bad. Let's make sure we keep up with that. All right.
There you go.
Let's see here. All right. Tell me what you see.
They're showing a replay right now. His guard falling off. Now they're showing the from the left field corner replay. Now we got Martini with the pitch, swing and a miss.
All right. So
0-1. And 13, 12, 11, 10, 9, 8.
The issue that I have
7,
is that it goes
6.
to live every time I try to pause it. I'm going to see if it can't let me maybe go back. Yes, this is the perks of having cable, as Nick has.
Yeah. Do you have cable, or are you on Fubo?
No, I do not. I'm on Fubo.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't have that.
That's what I get for illegally streaming stuff. Last night was great. Apple TV, you and I were both.
Yeah, we were right there. Have you seen the next play yet?
Yeah, Martini just flew out.
All right, so we're close. I might be a little behind you, but I can live with that. All right. Chat, God love you. I really do appreciate you being here. We're gonna do our best. I'm gonna do my best. Craig's gonna do his best. We'll see where this show goes. It's frustrating, really. Quite honestly.
It's one of those shows where we've had plenty of losses where we literally just felt like we had nothing to talk about. So, we've had worse shows, chat. I'll put it that way. We've had worse shows. This isn't going to be top notch. This isn't going to be all-star Chatterbox Reds, but I think there's some things to talk about, both positive and negative.
It's going to be an all-star. Maybe it's all-star manager David Bell. Kind of like, maybe that's the kind of show we're going to go for.
There you go. Just the guy you want up at the plate right now is Noel V. Marte and his over 3.
Not seeing the ball well. Maybe the yellow we could. I don't know. Maybe the yellow is the issue. I say that jokingly.
If I remember, last year, didn't he have like 2 different colors though that he would like alternate between based on how things were going?
I don't
I feel like there
remember
was
him wearing this much yellow last year. I could be wrong about that, but
I feel like Jim Day did a story during one of the games where he would like switch back and forth between blue and yellow, depending on if he was looking for power or if he was just looking for hits or what. But
all right, well, there's your bloop. There's your bloop. Now you need the blast.
Take the blast.
Now you need the blast. Let's just bring every cliche we can. I'll tell you what Noelve does really well right now. He just finds a way to hit the ball right on the fist and put it right in front of an outfielder.
Are you pinch hitting for Blake Dunn here? You got to, right? I don't know who's on your bench.
Well, that's fair. I don't really know who's on your bench, who's available.
Wins, Espinal.
This right here is the real problem.
They're going Edwin Rios.
I mean, genuinely, this is the real problem with this baseball team. We got a guy that is played 130 games in the major leagues, and we do this show every single day. Every single day, I've not ever seen this guy swing a baseball bat.
He just got called. Oh, they're pulling Foley. He just got called up.
We're going to go to a lefty, and then he's going to pinch it. He's going to pinch it he's going to pinch it Rios right now.
He's going to bring in Wins.
Yes.
He's going to bring in Wins.
Agree.
Right?
Yes, he has to.
Huh. Yeah, we were talking about it before we went live, Trace. I mean, this team, obviously you've got Ellie, you've got Jonathan India playing really well right now. But other than that, it feels like you've got a whole lot of meh and a whole lot of streakiness going on with this team. And, not ideal, but even in this situation, again, no fault of his own. Certainly understand the scenario he's going through, but like, would be really nice to have Jake Fraley available to pinch hit in a situation like this. Obviously, they're countering with a lefty, so maybe you pull Fraley back afterwards anyway. But like, I'm very surprised that they're even worrying about Edwin Rios in this situation. Like, this is your closer.
Well, I'll tell you what it does to me. I think what it is. Go ahead, Craig. Sorry.
Well, I'm just saying, you got you've got a closer on your mound that, yeah, last night was rough, but like in general, you probably should have trust in. And you're worrying about Edwin Rios coming to the plate for the Reds, and you're countering with a lefty out of the bullpen. I don't know.
I think it's a smart move because ultimately, if you're the Tigers, I think what you're thinking in your mind is okay, we're going to bring in a lefty against Rios, which we probably know that ultimately means that we probably have to face Wins. And I think that that's the real. They'd rather face Wins in a long-winded way than have to face a lefty with a guy that's thrown a lot of pitches over the last 2 days. Is my thought. It's like I think that's more of trying to protect their closer from throwing too many pitches than it is a strategy, because I think that ultimately at the end of the day they know they're going to have to face somebody that's not very good. And this, I mean, put it this way: would you rather have? I know Alexis Diaz probably isn't a good comparison, but like, would you rather have Sam Mole come into the game and face a lefty to get your last out of the game? Probably so, over any other situation.
I mean, I don't know. I guess after you give up 2 hits, maybe it changes your mindset a little bit, but just
he got hit last night too, and he just got a bomb hit off of a steer.
For sure.
I mean,
and one swing can completely change the outcome. I mean,
right.
So let's see. Did the Reds counter here?
They had to have. I haven't seen it yet.
They did. Espinal.
You've got to be kidding me. Like, in all honesty, and this isn't a bit. I know people think I get on here and it's like, oh, look at Trace. He's going to scream and yell. And he's going to try to make a show of it. But this is what I'm talking about with this team. This is 2 nights in a row, Craig, and I hope he hits one over the fence and makes me a fool of myself. But if this is the best we have, then at 188, 4 home runs, 507 OPS. That's the best we have in clutch situations. And I'm doing my best right now to try to get him to hit a home run, but this is disgusting if we're being honest.
Yeah. And a guy yesterday who recorded 2 outs in the last 2 innings in 2 very uncompetitive at-bats and saw 3 total pitches. So
Terrible.
Here he is, down 2-0, swinging on a ball outside of the zone.
That's right. Yeah, really good swing.
It should be 3-0 here.
6 inches outside. You're hitting a $188, and it's 2-0, and you swing at a ball 6 inches outside.
I'm going to sound a lot like Nick Kirby right here, but you're Santiago Espinal. You're ahead in the count 2-0. You swing at a ball that should be ball 3. Now you just swing at a ball that should be ball 4, and we should have left-handed masher Stuart Fairchild coming up to the plate with 2 guys on and a chance to win this ball game. But instead, Santiago Espinal swings at 2 balls out of the zone, and here we go with the 2-2 pitch that I think we can predict without even watching that he's going to swing at some ball in the dirt, and it's going to be strike 3. Oh, the ball went in the dirt, but good job to Espinal by not swinging.
Yeah, it's gross. This is the part where, I love doing this show. I really appreciate the people that tune into the show every single day and give us a chance to do this. And it really is, I love it. But I mean, if we can't look at ourselves in the mirror and ask ourselves if this is actually a relatively competent team,
there it is.
When you have Espinal hitting, that's hard to do. I've never played Major League Baseball in my life. Not a single day of it. Some would say I never had a semblance of a chance, and that may be fair. But I had played baseball long enough to know, Craig, that if I did get a chance to play Major League Baseball, I think I would look like Santiago Espinal. That's kind of that's what I think that I would produce, quite frankly. All right, well, we do them after every game, so we're going to do them again. You know what kind of intro you're going to get, and we're going to do a show. I'm going to do my best, Craig, to behave tonight. I'm going to do my very, very best. All right, Craig, here we go. Reds lose. Chatterbox Reds edition of another loss to the Detroit Tigers. I was told coming into this series, into this homestand, it was a pivotal one in which, depending on how things went, that might be the decision between being buyers and or sellers at the deadline. They're off to a horrific start. Haven't won a game so far this homestand, albeit only 2 games so far. I will at least hold my hand up and say there's still a long way to go in this homestand before the All-Star break. But I'll say it out loud if you won't. Tonight, and by tonight I mean today, was an utter catastrophe, if we're being honest. You can't continue to waste this many good starts and to think at the end of the year it's all going to work out. We already are down the 8 ball here, or looking down the 8 ball, trying to find a way out of something that we already dug ourselves a hole earlier this season. And I thought we might have done it. They got your hopes up, Craig. It's like, oh my God, we went to New York. They swept the Yankees. We were talking about maybe getting swept. So you're already net a couple games there. Now you turn around and you're like, well, you're going against somebody that, quite frankly, has no reason to be doing what he did to the Reds offense today. And you have Hunter Greene goes out and does unbelievable things, and here we are talking about another Reds loss. I don't know if you have anything to say here before we get going. We obviously have the box score recap. As always, we'll jump into thank God for Spencer Steer for a nice DSC there at the end of the game. Good kudos to him. But anything that you want to kind of add? I know we'll talk about a good amount of stuff here. I'm going to, the last thing I'm going to say, Craig, I know people think that I do bits. I know people think that I get on here and I start screaming and yelling. And I know people think that I probably just make up stuff to try to yell about it. And it's like, I'm just myself. There's things that piss me off. Clearly, if you have not followed me on X lately, there's things that just piss me off. And this whole situation with letting down our starters time and 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 time. I don't think there's enough times for me to go on, but time again, it's getting old. But go ahead, Craig. I don't know if you got anything to add.
I mean, what more is there to add to that? I mean, it's extremely frustrating, and they come out and they show glimpses of the chance to, they start today's game, and Hunter Greene's great, and we'll talk more about his start as the show goes on. But for him to leave this game with only a 2-0 lead after going 7 innings, just. And then you go to the bullpen, and the bullpen immediately, not even like a little bit later, just immediately implodes. And just a gut shot. You came into this series, yesterday was a gut shot because you came into this series hoping that maybe you take 2 out of 3, maybe even sweep the Tigers. And now here you are, you drop the first 2, and you're left tomorrow facing Tarek Skubal and staring down the barrel of a sweep at the hands of the Tigers. So the same way that the Yankees announcers pronounced the Reds name after they got swept is exactly how I would expect the Reds fans to think about being swept by the Detroit Tigers. So disheartening.
It's inexcusable, quite honestly. There's a good amount of content to talk about today, whether you want to get into the Hunter Greene situation, whether he stays in or he stays out. We'll talk about the 8th inning with Cruz and Mole. Talk about how this offense can't figure it out, save their lives in regards to being semi-consistent on a regular basis. We'll talk about all that and more, but before we do that, as always, we do the box score recap. Once again, I'll throw up a graphic for you, Craig, just to kind of give you a semblance of a privacy there as you do your deal. But I just want to say, on days like today, I actually feel a semblance of bad for you.
Well, we'll do our best. Here we go. After dropping game 1 of the series 5-4, Hunter Greene and the Cincinnati Reds were back at it for an early evening matchup with the Detroit Tigers at Great American Ballpark. The Tigers opt to go with a bullpen game in game 2 of this 3-game set. After the Reds and Tigers were only able to muster a sprinkling of runners through the first 4.5 innings, back-to-back walks by Bo Brisky and to Spencer Steer and Nick Martini to start the 5th gave the Reds their first opportunity of the day. After failing to get the job done last night, Tyler Stevenson finds a meaty fastball and drives it to left center for a 2-run double. The 2-0 lead was the first runs the Reds had scored for Hunter Greene in his last 3 outings. Hunter Greene returned to the mound for the 7th. He retired Greene, Kelly, and Malloy on 9 pitches to put an exclamation point on his stellar outing. Greene goes 7 innings pitched, 3 hits, no runs, 2 walks, and 7 strikeouts. The Reds turned to Fernando Cruz in the 8th, and after retiring Gio Urshela to start the inning, he would surrender a double to Parker Meadows and then a 2-run blast from pinch hitter Wenceel Perez to tie the game at 2 apiece. Cruz would walk Matt Vierling before David Bell would make the move to Sam Mole. Mole walked Colt Keith before Mark Canha doubled on a weak line drive to right field, scoring Vierling. Keith would later score on a ground out to first base by Riley Greene, and Zach McKinstry, pinch running for Canha, would cross the plate on a Carson Kelly double. All told, the Tigers pushed 5 runs across the plate on the inning. On 4 hits and 3 walks, they would lead 5-2. The Reds yet again gave it their best in the 9th for a late rally. Spencer Steer led off with a home run to left center off Tigers closer Jason Foley. Noelvi Marte would add a single, but the Tigers would escape with the 5-3 win. Fernando Cruz picks up the loss as the Reds drop the first 2 games of the series to the Tigers and fall back to 5 games under 500 at 42-47. The Reds will look to avoid the sweep tomorrow as Graham Ashcraft takes the mound against Cy Young candidate Tarek Skubal.
We had a deep drive of the day, so shout out to Spencer Steer. I didn't have time to put the exit velo in there. I was too busy watching the Reds to see if they can find a way to come back, but I'm sure it was fast, and I'm sure it was high, and I'm sure the degree launch angle was great, and all that was fancy, and we all love it. So we can all check that StatCast out later and feel good about it, but I'm sorry it's not on there for the rundown. DSC, though, they are still a leader in renewable commodities for biofuel production, specializing in used cooking oil collection, aggregation, and sales. Visit www.deepsouthcommodities.com for more information. Thank you to John in sponsoring the deep drive of the day. Shout out to Spencer Steer for giving us a chance to run that there. So, once again, Craig, I guess let's jump right into it. The 8th inning is what everyone's probably going to want to talk about. I see people already having I don't want to say a semblance of frustration with the decision David Bell made. I don't know if we want to kind of get into that first. I know Hunter wanted to stay, and I'll also openly admit that I'm a guy that typically likes guys to stay in if it looks like it's effortless, to be very clear. If it appears to be effortless. And I think that you could make the case that it appeared that way. I'll also openly say, Craig, that Fernando Cruz has been absolute nails all season long. Sam Moll's been nails all season long. So I'm not going to sit here and act as if going to those guys is a horrible decision. And maybe it was the right one, maybe it was the wrong one. Hindsight's always 20/20, as we well know. But if Hunter Greene goes back out there, maybe he gives up a couple home runs and everyone's mad that they didn't take him out sooner. But Craig, I don't know if you have really a strong opinion or maybe any opinion at all on the situation with David Bell, but he's getting crushed as always. There are some people that are already calling for his head, believe it or not, Craig, about this decision. Your thoughts?
Consider me so shocked, Trace. So shocked that the Reds fans would double take on David Bell's decisions. No, look, he was at 104 pitches on the game. He's thrown 111 twice this year, so it's not like he can't go deeper than that. But at the same time, you're talking about a guy whose last 2 outings didn't go very deep into the game. And so maybe it's just one of those things where you give him the confidence back, you let him take his 7 innings pitched, and you move on to a bullpen, which has really been a strength of this team. I mean, the pitching in general has been what's kept this team in contention. The offense certainly hasn't done it. So, I think Hunter Greene, David Bell both probably have a ton of confidence in the bullpen. We talked about it last night. The Reds did a great job being able to save their bullpen in order to be fresh for tonight by only utilizing, 3 innings out of Brent Suter and Buck Farmer last night. So everybody was fresh and ready to go. Hunter Greene gives you 7 solid outings. You go to Fernando Cruz, who, as you said, has been nails all season long. The one conversation, obviously, and I don't know this answer. Maybe there's stats out there that can tell me this. Maybe there's not. But, Fernando Cruz, the outings at least that stand out the most are outings where he's coming into high leverage situations where there's men on base and he's having to get out of jams. And there is something to be said for guys who thrive off of that pressure. And I'm not saying that Fernando Cruz pitched poorly today because he wasn't under pressure, but there might be something to it where you're coming into a ball game and there's nobody on base and you can kind of just do what you want to do. And he comes in and he gets Urshela to fly out on the first at bat, but then, from there it was downhill, double, home run, walk, and his day was done. And so I don't know. I could certainly be convinced that Hunter Greene, the way he was pitching, especially over the last 5 innings of the outing, deserved an opportunity if he wanted it. What I would say to your comment, at least, is that they showed the footage of him coming off the mound after the 7th inning. David Bell was right there. They shook hands. There was no real conversation. Hunter Greene certainly didn't fight to go back out there. Now, that doesn't mean that they hadn't had a conversation before and he fought to go back out for the 7th or whatever it may be. Who knows what happens behind behind the camera lens that we don't see.
Right.
But, if Graham Ashcraft was in that same scenario, or even Andrew Abbott, I feel like both of them would fight to go back out there. Maybe Hunter Greene just knows David Bell's approach. Maybe him and Derek Johnson had a conversation before the inning that this was going to be it regardless of how it goes. Maybe they felt like Gio Urshela and the fact that he had gotten a single in his last at-bat against Hunter Greene, they wanted to go with somebody else. But, I don't know. I can see both sides of it. I realize that our job is probably to have a take on something like this. But at the end of the day, he was at 104 pitches. The likelihood of him getting out of the eighth is probably low. And at that point, you're probably looking at matchups. And do you want him going against Urshela, Meadows, and either Kreidler, or in this scenario, Perez? But I don't know. I feel like Fernando Cruz has been so trustworthy this year that if he's your guy in the eighth and realistically he's your setup or your high leverage guy, you didn't use him yesterday, then you got to have faith in him to kind of put the nails in the coffin. And it just didn't happen today.
I think a fair question at the press conference. And again, I'm not suggesting that the guys that are at the press conference aren't good at their jobs or anything like that. And to be fair, I really don't pay attention to the amount of questions that are asked at a press conference. But one question I'd ask David Bell is how many times or how often does the thought process of a guy's future come into play when you make a decision on taking him out, leaving him in? Because you have this whole pitch count generation. That's the term I'd use. I'm not suggesting it's a bad one. I'm just calling it for what it is. Pitch counts in this era of baseball are viewed upon as a very, very, controversial or specific thing. He was at 100 and whatever many pitches. I think it was 104, 105, 106, something like that. And you ask him to go back out another inning. Let's just say he goes out there and he does well. He's probably throwing another at least 12, 13 pitches. If he throws 122, 123 pitches, at what point, I guess, do you get into the realm of, hey, you're being a little reckless with this guy's arm? A guy's arm, quite frankly, I'll say it if you don't want to say it, I don't think this team's worth a damn. I don't think that this team's worth risking the future of anything. Now, having said that, I'm not suggesting for a single second that you're going to ruin Hunter Greene's future by going out there throwing 15 to 20 more pitches, especially if he was feeling good. I want to make that vividly clear. Having said that, though, I do think that there's a relative fair conversation to be had with David Bell on, do you think from time to time that you're just going to be cautious, knowing the stakes, the situations with what you have? And he might not ever be honest about that. But I would be not shocked if behind closed doors he said, yeah, at some point you got to realize that we are who we are this year. We're not going to be a team that, quite frankly, I want to go out there and risk these great arms throwing 120 pitches to try to beat the Tigers on a Saturday. If I can't bring in my setup man and my closer to beat the Detroit Tigers, one of the worst offenses in baseball, then what the hell am I doing in the first place? If we have to, and this is what really boils my blood, it really always comes down to something we want to complain about in the 7th, 8th, or 9th inning. Every single time, and I say we as in like a collective fan base, maybe other media members, whatever it may be, this is the same song and dance. We never want to talk about how piss-poor at-bats we have in the first inning, the second inning, the third inning, the fourth inning, the fifth inning, the sixth inning, and the seventh inning. We don't want to do that. Thank God Stevenson put a decent at-bat together and hit a double today, because if not, if he hits a weak ground ball somewhere or pops out, we're talking about getting relatively blanked by the Tigers today in a bullpen game, might I add. That's the real problem if we want to get to the nuts and bolts of this. Now, I'm not trying to skip over Greene. We'll talk about him in a minute. But the genuine issue with this baseball team is the same one we've had for about a month and a half. This offense is not good enough. It's as simple as that. We have nobody that nobody's a strong word. In fact, this proves my point. The guy that we can rely on the most, that gives us probably the most consistency, is a 22-year-old kid trying to figure his way out in the big leagues. That's the God's honest truth. Maybe you could argue India, which is a guy, quite honestly, we as Reds fans could all agree that it's not a guarantee that he'll be here next year. So it can get a little scary. I'm not trying to overreact, but it can get a little scary when we're going to start relying on the future in regards to Marte. And I know it's been it's been a week and a half, but you can't look any worse than Marte's looked almost. TJ Friedel, who can't stay healthy. Matt McClain, who, let's face it, he's been hurt every year of his professional baseball career. And then CES, who also is now out. The only thing that we feel really good about, or we should feel good about, is a starting pitching staff. But if we're being honest there, one of the best arms in that rotation is a guy that gets hurt a lot. And I'm not trying to call doomsday or anything like that, Craig. I'm just saying, if we as Reds fans can be honest with ourselves, we're going to need some help. We're going to need some help. We've praised Nick Krall a lot on this show, and I'm not saying that he didn't deserve it. But the truth is, Craig, his feet are going to be at the fire a little bit come towards the end of this year and definitely next year to see whether or not this core, young group is going to have enough of those pieces to stay on the field to be able to produce. And it's not his fault they got hurt, but it is his job to fill holes if there are holes that need to be filled. And right now, offensively, they got a lot of them. Simple as that.
Yeah, a team that is going to be built on platooning has to have depth, because injuries are going to happen. They happen to every major league team. Things happen. It happens every single year. The problem is, who are you filling in those gaps with? And right now we're filling them in with Santiago Espinal and Edwin Rios and, Austin Wins and
even Nick Martini. As much as we like Nick Martini, if we're being honest, come on. I mean, we got Blake Dunn out here. I mean, it's like it legitimately looks like a Memphis Redbirds versus the Nashville Sounds game the other night. With all due respect to a few of those guys, not trying to discredit them or anything like that, but that's kind of what you feel like this offense is at times. It's like, who? What have they done? We got guys coming to the plate, Craig, not to cut you off. We got guys coming to the plate, Craig, with the game on the line. And the stat that Bally can bring up, the only stat that Bally can produce on the fly is a combined career statistic of 120 or 130 games from a guy with 20 home runs. That's what we're doing. We're bringing a guy off the bench, and we got a guy that's literally never played a game for the Reds. I mean, it's quite comical. Now, I know they have a lot of injuries. There is that, but what do you do? Is there anything to do?
Well, sure, they have a lot of injuries, but for a team who prides themselves on building for the future and has theoretically been focused on building up a prospect pipeline, and look, I'm not going to sit here and talk like there's nobody in the pipeline that's going to be, a star or any good. I'm not a prospector well enough to know that. I know there's some names that guys are really high on, but when you're turning to these guys, and Blake Dunn may turn out to be a perfectly fine, serviceable major leaguer one day, but he's like 1 for 17 right now, and you're forced to put him out there in a situation in pinch hit for Will Benson in the 5th inning because you don't trust Will Benson to face a lefty. Like, it just, we talked about it before. I wish that the Reds had like 1 or 2 guys that you could just throw out there every day. They would hit 275, push 300 if you're lucky. And you could just had a couple of guys that you could rely on for a hit or 2 a game. Like, you didn't have to worry about them slumping for super extended periods of time. You didn't have to worry about, are they going to be able to step up in big moments? They don't have that. I was a big proponent of trying to go after a guy like JD Martinez this offseason when he was available, especially later in the offseason. They didn't do that. It feels like as much as I think that this team has the potential, I don't want to downplay the potential of this team. I don't think they were set up for the rigors of a 162 game season. And that's what's been difficult. This team is one of the streakiest I've ever seen. And unfortunately, a lot of times when a player goes through a slump, you have other guys that are able to pick them up. But right now, it feels like when one guy's streaking, everybody's streaking. And when one guy's slumping, everybody's slumping. And there's not anybody to get them out of it right now. They just kind of sit in it and they slump for several games. And, Jonathan India, tip the cap to him. He's on base now for the 17th straight game. He's got hits in, 16 out of his last 17 or 15 out of his last 17. Great. I love it for him, but he can't be the only one. And right now he's the only one doing it. And just offensively this entire season, it's crazy to me. And again, you look at the stats, the Reds are middle of the pack in the MLB in terms of runs scored per game.
Yeah.
But they either score 8 runs or
I know what you're gonna
0
say.
runs. Like,
doesn't it feel like they just kind of tack on in games that don't matter? And I know people have said that before, and it pisses me off about some people do that with Joey Votto. They're like, well, that's great that he can hit a home run or whatever when the Reds are winning 10-1. That's such a dumb take about an individual player. But as a collective unit this year, Craig, I feel the same way. And I don't know if that's actual real fact, if that's hardened in fact because we just are emotional creatures. But, Craig, it does feel like every time this team has a 7-1 lead in the 6th inning, they'll tack on 7 runs. And it's like, I'm not saying it doesn't matter, but let's be honest. That's part of the reason why we have this massive run differential discrepancy and why they can't find a way to have a better record.
Well, I mean, Hunter Greene's a great example of this, right? Hunter Greene now with today gets 9 no decisions on the year, okay? In those starts, he's gone 51 innings and given up 14 total earned runs. It's a 2.47 ERA. The Reds are 0-9 in those games now after Hunter Greene gives them 51 innings and 14 runs. 0-9. I mean,
that's the season. That's the season. I hate to be like that and be like the season's over, but in another analogy, it kind of feels like the Reds have had, offensively speaking, in a football game. The Reds have had so many 70, 80-yard drives with a 10 to 12 plays, and they were just marching. It's like they deserve to find a way to score here. And then they fumble the football on the 5-yard line time and time again, and you come away with nothing. That's what it feels like with this starting pitching. You can't possibly tell me at the end of the season we're going to be like, I can't believe we snuck in the back end of these playoffs. And by the way, Hunter Greene has a 2.5 ERA in games in which we're 0-9. Like, that's, I hate to say that, but like that is the difference between a average team being able to get into this average postseason or a average team not making it. And I don't know if we can call this team average, to be honest, but I'm trying to be fair and nice. Hunter Greene, we'll jump on him really quickly because I think it's a disservice to him to gloss over his outing because of the things that happened, obviously, towards the end of the game. But there's not a lot more that you can say about the fact that he has developed. He has gotten better. And he is, not only has he gotten better, but I think he's grown in confidence as well. I think that there's a very clear confidence struggle that he might have had last year, even going into the early parts of this year, where he's made statements in the past like, you know, I have a hard time and it's really hard to learn in the big leagues. He said that time and time again. It's like, you know, it's hard for a guy like me to learn in the big leagues because he feels the heat. He knows kind of the pressure that he's been under because he's the golden arm, the SI Sports Illustrated cover, all that. But more importantly, I think from his perspective this year, he didn't get the opening day start. And I'm not saying this is what spurred all of it, Craig, but I do think that there's something in you from a competitive standpoint that he probably was like, you know what? I'm going to focus on what I can control. And I think he did that about as well as anybody could have. And he's throwing the ball great all season long. This isn't just a one-time thing. So is he due for some regression? Probably. But maybe he's not. And if he's not, then that's a hell of a piece you got going forward. Speaking of pieces, not to want to jump to a whole nother subject, but I think we have some serious conversations to be had about pieces towards the end of this week if they're not able to find a way to start rattling off some big time wins here soon.
I mean, sure, but I just don't know what the expectation can be for Reds fans, right? Like, this team is in the position it is because it's been rebuilding for years, right? Like, we don't have any cornerstone, and you know, someone just put it in the chat, and I'm not going to say their name because I don't think that it's a real name. Maybe it is, maybe they're not. But how many players on this team today would you consider part of the core?
That's currently playing?
I don't know. Even if they're not currently playing.
3.
Ellie.
Marte.
McLean.
Well, McLean. I'm saying guys that are actually playing. No. You're talking about.
Oh, okay.
I mean, like the guys that played the day. The guys that played the day.
Guys that played today.
Guys that played the day. You could convince me that Ellie, Marte, and Stevenson. Now, Stevenson's the biggest question mark of them all, but I just keep asking myself, like, what's your other option in 2-3 years? I don't know. To be honest, I think Stevenson's the answer, but I don't know if it is. But they got a great point. And I think I guess if you're talking about, certainly Greene's a part of it. So 4, I guess, that played today. But that's not a good answer. I get what he's saying. I completely agree. Like, the question ultimately, Craig, is like, do we get mad? Do we get mad at Nick Krall for not having a backup plan to the things that happen? Or do we just say, you know what? This is a tough situation that happened this year, and we had a lot of bad things that have gone on. The problem is, Craig, the real problem is this franchise has cried wolf far too long. They have already burned that bridge. They have burned that bridge. You can't keep telling people to be patient, when they've been patient for what has basically been a generation. We've been waiting forever. My whole life been waiting, quite honestly. I've not one single time, no, nor have you, seen this team advance in the postseason. We're tired of waiting. But I also will admit, Craig, that's not Nick Krall's fault. So I'm stuck in a rock and a hard place. I'll be God honest truth. My realism, my like if I put my business hat on and I try to sit down and I be rational and I have constructive thoughts, I say to myself, you know what? This isn't I can't hold this group of people to something that's happened a long time ago. But the fan in me says, I'm so tired of it. Fix it. Fix the problem. I'm going to leave the room. You fix the problem. I'll come back. And that attitude sometimes works. Steve Jobs made a pretty damn good company acting like that. I don't know what the right play is.
I mean, respectfully, Nick Krall's been your general manager since 2015. Or assistant general manager since 2015.
Yes, the question Kirby would ask, I'll ask you the same question really quickly before you jump in. How long has he actually been the real decision maker of being able to do what he wants to do? And some of that's his fault too. Like, I guess if you can't do the job or they're not letting you do the job, quit. Easy thing for me and you to say when you're making a good amount of money, but you get my point.
Yeah, I don't know. I probably right around that time frame, right? Walt Jocketty left in 2016 was his last year as general manager. So realistically, Nick Krall's been leading it for most of that time. I think here's the thing for me is that you've had a plan and it's a long-term plan, right? Nobody expected Nick Krall to turn things around immediately. I wouldn't expect him to do that, and nobody else should either. But at some point, the plan has to show promise. And the problem is right now, the pitching has absolutely lived up to the plan, right? Your starting pitching is doing what you would expect it to do. You've seen guys, especially this season, who can and should be a cornerstone of your rotation moving forward. At the bare minimum, Hunter Greene and Nick Lodolo, right? I think you've got other guys in Andrew Abbott, Graham Ashcraft that can certainly compete to be part of that rotation, but you have multiple pieces who can and should be part of your rotation for years to come. Offensively, I just feel like we've missed on almost every move that we've tried to make. And you look at the draft choices that have been made, and there's a lot of names on there who are highly regarded, but how long do we have to wait? And when you have guys that you're running out there, like Blake Dunn, who's always had a high strikeout rate and continues to have a high strikeout rate in the professionals. You got guys like Cam Collier who have an extremely high strikeout rate. It just, at some point, I want to understand what this team's goal is, because I don't see anybody who, like we talked about before, where you can rely on to hit 275, 300. There's nobody in the system right now that I'm aware of that you can rely on to do that. Right now, I'm totally fine if you want to bring up power through your system and supplement that through free agency and proven offensive guys that you can bring in to be consistent hitters in the major leagues to supplement these young guns that can hit bombs. I'm okay with that, but the Reds have never been willing to pay those guys. And so now you're in a situation where this year you paid Jeimer Candelario, and Candelario has certainly shown streaks of what you hoped that he could be, but he's also shown extreme droughts. And so I want to better understand what the plan is because none of the guys that we've given opportunities to this year have shown me anything. And, guys that we like and we want to believe in, guys like Blake Dunn, get guys like Jacob Hurtubise, we want to believe that those guys can be part of the future plans.
Yeah.
But we're not seeing it today.
No, I think we're grasping for straws at times if we're being completely frank about some of these guys. And maybe there's a diamond in the rough every so often, but let's be honest. Like a guy like Jacob Hurtubise is not a guy that you could ever really truly think to yourself that, oh man, like this is going to be the future. And I'm not saying that anyone's doing that, but like that's what we've relied on this year. We've relied on a bunch of players that have no business being a part of a team that's trying to make a postseason. So kind of is what it is. I'm not going to get too down on the whole situation because just like that, it can pop back up. I don't think that what happened last year towards the middle of the year and towards the end of the year, I know they kind of fell off or started to slump a little bit. I don't think it was a total fluke. I definitely think that McLean has some real talent, some real skill sets to him. I definitely think that Marte is better than what he's shown. And whether or not the PEDs were part of that, situation, I don't want to believe that. I'll openly say that I don't know. I mean, we'll find out. Time will tell. I think he's a better player than what he's shown. But again, I'm not going to sit here and act like 100%. He's a slam dunk home run. He's going to be the future third baseman or wherever he ends up playing for the Cincinnati Reds. The last thing I'll say is Spencer Steer is a guy maybe we've forgotten about there for really quickly, and I don't mean to overlook Spencer Steer. I will give Spencer Steer all the credit in the world from the standpoint that he's there every day. I don't know how talented Spencer Steer is totally in regards to the fact that oh man, he's going to be one of the better players in the league. But I at least admit that it's nice to have someone that you can rely on that plays every day, and he's semi productive, or I'll just say productive, not semi productive. So I'll leave it at that. I think that there's a lot of frustration on days like today because you wanted to keep the positive momentum, and now you find yourself in a hole where you got to find a way to win tomorrow. Speaking of tomorrow, Craig, I don't want to call it
real quick, Grace.
Go ahead.
Real quick. Let's have another debate. I actually don't know that this will be much of a debate, but I'll bring it up anyway because I saw someone in the chat bring it up. Nick Senzel today DFA'd by the Washington Nationals to make room for Trey Lipscomb.
Yeah.
Any interest?
I have interest. Yeah, I have interest. It just depends on what he's asking. I mean, I don't know how much the budget is down there at Great American Ballpark to bring back a guy like Nick Senzel. If it's league minimum or something of that like, yeah, I do. I mean, Espinal, he's not good enough, man. He's not been good enough, period. I know we've been waiting on it, and there's been some decent moments out of Espinal where he's gotten some big hits and they just didn't ultimately fall in regards to, I think he got a hit and who got thrown out at home plate or whatever. But you get my point. Like, he's had some shining moments, but he's overall been not good enough. I don't know. I mean, here's the thing, Craig. We've said this before. We're just swapping deck chairs, though. Like, we're not fixing the problem. We're genuinely not fixing a problem. Like, we're taking, I don't know, we're taking one bad apple and we're replacing it with another one, and we're hoping that the apple tastes a little bit better. I don't know. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah. Well, my thoughts are that Nick Senzel was DFA'd for a reason from the Washington Nationals, nonetheless, right? So, like,
yeah.
But let's not go out and act like he's going to be some savior.
We were clamoring for Mike Ford too. Let's remember that.
Correct. Nick Senzel is certainly not going to provide a lot of defensive value, which is really what you went out and got Santiago Espinal for, not to be an offensive bat, but to be defensive, insurance, I guess. Nick Senzel in the past, we trusted him to mash left-handed pitching, and the Reds saw him have success in kind of a platoon role this year. 207 against left-handed pitching. It's not like he's doing that again this year. He's hitting right-handed pitching just as well as he is hitting left-handed pitching, and neither one of them are very good. So, look, it's one of those things where, like you said, you're swapping deck chairs at this point. Like neither one of them provide much value. At least Espinal can play a little bit of defense, but
no, I don't know.
I also don't love running Nick Martini out in left field. So
no, listen, this team is is what it is. And the truth is, if anyone tells you any differently, then I don't really know if they're trying to be honest, or maybe they just don't know baseball well enough. That's one thing that I feel like, I'm not trying to be funny. That's one thing I think I've realized today is, like, I think there's times where you get in arguments with people and, like, they just, I'm not trying to be rude, I just don't think they see the same game that I see sometimes. They're not watching the same thing, and they have a different opinion on how things play out than I do. And, I know that there was the whole, debate about the contact play from last night, and then the article that Jeff wrote, and I have nothing against Jeff, but it's just like I just can't disagree with something more. Like, I can't possibly think that you could think that. It seems impossible. And I'm not trying to be funny or rude or crude or anything. It's like we're so far apart. There's no reason to even have a conversation. I'll say it straight to the camera's face. Like, we're going to do a show after every single one of these games. This team's not good. They're not good. Now, can they make the postseason? Yeah, because it's a horrible. When I say horrible, I'm talking about disgusting league. A disgusting league. We're trying to win the AFC South. Like, can we be better than the Jaguars? Or do we be better than the Titans? I don't know. But I do know this. If you get on a national show and you start talking about the AFC South, everyone's just like, yeah, they all suck. I mean, best of luck to them when they get in the postseason. And sure enough, what happens? They get in the postseason, they get boat raced. Simple as that. But I digress. We shall find and play another day. Speaking of another day, Craig, they do play tomorrow. So we have Graham Ashcraft. He's going for the Cincinnati Reds against Tarek Skubal. And essentially, Skubal, if we're being honest, is not a guy that we want to face. So I don't know. I'm not trying to be the world's worst, most pessimistic person in the world, but we just watched Hunter Greene go out and shove the day against a bullpen day, and we found a way to lose, and now we gotta. You know what though? I'll say this tomorrow, 1:40 Bally Sports. But one thing I'll say, Craig. You know what? Maybe that's what they need. Maybe that's just the guy they need to be on the mound to get the bats going. It seems to work everywhere else. Play the Dodgers. We'll find a way to beat them. Play the Yankees. We'll find a way to beat them. Let's just find a way to beat maybe the AL Cy Young Award winner this season. We'll find out if we can do it. Highly doubtful, but we'll try it nonetheless. Any parting thoughts here you have before we get going on our Saturday night adventure of whatever it is that we plan to do? But I just want to say before we get going, thank you to everybody in the chat, and we very much appreciate all the support that we get on a night in, night out basis. But also, thank you to Craig for taking time out of his day for 2 nights in a row to fill in for some guys. You filled in for me plenty of times. You've been on the show, I think, more than I have this week, which is a shout out to you. So thank you for always filling in. And sometimes you got to wear it. Sometimes you become a whipping stick on this show from time to time. People just want to be mad at somebody, and they'll be mad at us. But more times than not, they're mad at David Bell. So shout out to David Bell for taking the blunt of it.
I'm glad somebody can take it off of our plates. Look, Skubal is unreal. Here's what I would say, though, and I was going to bring this up earlier. Skubal is someone that honestly is what I realize he's left-handed, but like it's something that I can aspire to Hunter Greene being at some point. If you look at Skubal early on in his career, he was throwing 60% fastball. He had zero reliance on his secondary pitches. And now he's got 5 pitches, none of which he throws more than 32% of the time. Hunter Greene has that same opportunity to continue to work on his stuff. He's getting, Skubal's getting 46% whiff on his changeups this year, 38% whiff on his slider. He currently sits at the plus 170 favorite to win the AL Cy Young. So based on how this show goes, we'll probably put up 7 runs on him tomorrow in the first 3 innings, and hopefully the bullpen can hold on. But yeah, I'm a little nervous about getting swept tomorrow, and just shows how important these first 2 really were, because you're facing a Cy Young candidate in the 3rd one, and now you're staring down a sweep. So yeah, hopefully the Reds can find a way to get it done, but optimism is not at its highest right now, Trace. Not at its highest.
It's not. It is not. And unfortunately, we'll be back here better than ever tomorrow. I really hope we find a way to win, because we need one. We need one in every way imaginable. The only thing I would say, though, is I'm going to do my homework, okay? I went out on a limb last night. I went out on a limb today. I'm out here just screaming and yelling about this whole situation, the contact play. Didn't think I was going to get off this show, did you? You didn't think I was going to get off this show without bringing up the fact that there's a little bit of karma. There's a little bit of just semi-justice that happened there in that 9th inning, isn't there? Or was it the 8th inning? I think it was the 8th inning. The contact play the Detroit Tigers ran, and it worked. I couldn't imagine running that play and putting pressure on the defense and them not making the play. But we'll talk about it. I'll find it out. Do my homework. We'll see if we'll stop running it. But most importantly, go Reds. See you tomorrow, everybody.